Exclusive contract with Feilu Novel Network Novel. Daqin. Me. Unmatched Prince, defending the Great Wall for 18 years. Young Master Changying, immediately head to the border and guard the Great Wall. Without summoning, one cannot return to Xianyang for life. A decree is to sending Changying to the border and not return to Beijing until death. I thought I would die in battle in a few years, but unexpectedly awakened to the system of pacification. Defend the Great Wall for a year and reward the Dragon Elephant's prison spirit. Defend the Great Wall for 3 years, reward with a bright silver spear and a long tassel in hand, dare to bind a dragon. Defend the Great Wall for 5 years, reward the Beiwei Army, and write a memorial from Wu Mu. 18 years later, the first emperor collapsed, and the world was divided into 4 parts. The 9 provinces jointly attacked the Great Qin. Just as various feudal lords broke through Xianyang and the great buildings were about to collapse, a silver spear emerged from the sky, causing the world to change its color. Feilu Novel Network reminds you that this novel and its characters are purely fictional. If there are any similarities, they are purely coincidental and should not be imitated. Chapter 1. I am in the north, the Great Wall is boundless. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Qin State, Shangjuan. The setting sun is like blood, and the wind and sand are boundless. 100,000 Qin troops were stationed here, driving criminals to build the Great Wall while resisting the invasion of foreign tribes in the north. At night, inside the captain's camp. Ding. The host has been guarding the Great Wall for 18 years and has received a reward of immortal phoenix blood *1. The faint candlelight shot out through the thin lampshade, and a man slowly opened his eyes. The young face has distinct edges and contours, with 2 sword eyebrows slanting into the temples. Unconsciously, it's been 18 years. The man slowly stood up, his long black hair draped over his shoulders, and his navy blue robe stretched out, revealing his strong chest muscles and the crisscrossing scars on his chest. His name is Ying Changying, the 7th son of Emperor Qin Shi Huang. Since traveling to the Qin dynasty 18 years ago, before I could adapt to this identity, I was sent to the border by a decree. That year, he just turned 9 years old. Afterwards, he made multiple inquiries and vaguely learned about the reason for being exiled to the border. Originally related to the rebellion of Marquis Changxin 18 years ago. Back in the day, Marquis Changxin AI controlled the court and wielded immense power. However, among Ying Changying's maternal family, many people secretly defected to Marquis Changxin. Later on, the rebellion failed, and these people naturally had to be liquidated one by one. Ying Changying's mother clan was implicated by the entire clan, and only Ying Changying, who was only 9 years old, managed to escape one calamity. But it was also issued to the border by a decree. If there is no accident, one shall not return to Xianyang until death. For a prince, such punishment is actually no different from killing him. However, although Ying Changying was unwilling to accept this result, she did not hold much resentment. Heart to heart. If he were Ying back then, he would probably have done even better. After all, no emperor will tolerate the existence of rebellion, let alone the ancient ancestor dragon of the Great Qin. It's fortunate to have regained one's life at least, and besides, it's a blessing in disguise. He originally thought he would die in battle in a few years. But I didn't expect to awaken the Zhenghua system halfway through. Then he was surprised to find that as long as he guarded the border, the system would issue rewards. The longer the time, the more abundant the rewards will be. His fate has changed ever since. Defend the Great Wall for 1 year and reward the Dragon Elephant for their prison strength. Defend the Great Wall for 3 years, reward with a bright silver spear and a long tassel in hand, dare to bind a dragon. Defending the Great Wall for 5 years, rewarding the Beiwei Army with a memorial from Wu Mu. Defending the Great Wall for 8 years, rewarding Yan Yun with 18 cavalry and the Luo family's marksmanship. If it weren't for these rewards, he would probably have died in the chaos of the army more than a decade ago. Now, it is his 18th year guarding the border. Ying Changying's gaze was somewhat complicated, and he still had some understanding of the history of the Great Qin. The 37th year of the first emperor. In July Beijing, the ancestral dragon collapsed on the sand dune platform. This year marks the 37th year of Emperor Shi Huang. In just a few short months, the Great Qin ancestor dragon is about to pass away. Subsequently, Zhao Gao supported Hu Hai to ascend to power, and the Great Qin dynasty declined from then on, eventually leading to the death of Emperor Li Tu. Ying Changying took a breath and cleared these chaotic thoughts out of her mind. No matter how the future evolves, only one's own strength is the eternal truth. So that I won't be photographed dead in the tide of the times. Ying Changying's mind twitched as a drop of bright red object appeared in his hand. Undead Phoenix Blood, *1. Note. Taking it can prolong life, reshape roots and bones. This is the reward he received from guarding the border for 18 years. A hint of excitement flashed in Ying Changying's eyes, and the reward this time seemed different from previous years. Props that can increase longevity can be considered miracles if placed anywhere. Little did they know that wise individuals like Ying Zheng were also obsessed with the path of longevity in their later years. Unfortunately, there was nothing to be gained. And that's not the most crucial yet. What Ying Changying values the most is the effect of undead phoenix blood on reshaping the root bone. And this is the true rebellion of the immortal phoenix blood. With the support of the system, his current strength is extraordinary. But fundamentally speaking, it still does not break away from the category of ordinary people, let alone compared to Xianyang's innate divine power and strong ability to lift mountains. But now, there is already an opportunity to break free from constraints. At this moment, Ying Changying no longer hesitated and swallowed the phoenix blood in her hand. Suddenly, a crackling sound came from within him, like the sound of bursting beans. This is immortal phoenix blood helping him refine his body. Every minute, his whole body's qi and blood become stronger. At this moment, Ying Changying felt a tremendous force pouring into his limbs, taking root and sprouting inside him. His whole body's qi and blood are increasing at an extremely exaggerated speed. At the same time, the dark wounds accumulated in his body over the years seem to be slowly recovering. Time passes by minute by second. It wasn't until 15 minutes later that this terrifying elevation gradually came to a halt. Suddenly, Ying Changying's eyes opened and two streams of essence burst out. Feeling the surging blood and energy all over his body, he felt that his strength had skyrocketed several times. Open the properties page. Host. Ying Changying Force. 101, Breaking the Limit. Physical Fitness. 106, Breaking the Limit. Wisdom. 80 Commander-in-Chief. 82 Politics. 76 Skills. Luo Family Spear, Perfection, Ancient Body Strengthening Technique, Perfection, Dragon Elephant Prison Control Strength, 5th Layer, Items. Wu Mu's Legacy Letter, Gentian Bright Silver Spear, Heavenly Shock Bow, Bagua Formation Diagram, Red Rabbit Horse Followers. Beiwei Army, 3000, Tiefu 2, 1000, Shinji Camp, 1000, Yanyan 18 Cavalry. Undead Phoenix Blood is indeed against the heavens. Ying Changying's eyes were burning as she watched her skyrocketing attribute values. If the previous self had only reached the pinnacle of an ordinary person. So at this moment, we have broken the shackles and exceeded the limits of humanity. Chapter 2. The Destruction of Yanmen City. Seeking to collect flowers and give rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Just as Ying Changying slowly realized her own strength. Suddenly. At this moment, the sound of the system rang out. Ding. Zhenghua branch task triggered. Destroy the invading Xiongnu troops in Yanmen County, mission deadline. 3 days. Task reward. Unknown. Penalty for failure. All attributes. Point 3. The task timer is now starting. Boom. Ying Changying suddenly stood up, his eyes bursting with fiery sharpness. These animals. The Xianyang invaded Yanmen County and surprisingly, such a big event happened. He has been in the frontier for many years and has witnessed countless human tragedies with his own eyes. No one knows better than him what suffering the people of the Great Qin would suffer once the Xianyang migrated south. Young men and elderly people will be slaughtered to the death. Women become playthings. And children can even become food rations. Originally, after he arrived at the border, with the support of the system, he took the initiative to lead troops northward multiple times. Part of it is because of system tasks, and the other part is because he volunteered. Over the course of several years, the Xianyang were killed with their heads rolling and blood flowing into a river. After multiple attacks, the Xianyang seemed to be a bit scared and began to strategically shrink, only operating in the area north of Yin Mountain and rarely going south. The name of Gongzi Changying is gradually echoing throughout the north. He never expected that these Xianyang wild beasts who remembered to eat or fight would dare to go south again. Someone, blow the horn and point troops. Ying Changying clenched her fist and suddenly said in a cold voice, Daqin Iron Cavalry. Follow me on the expedition. Lufan County. Located in the northernmost part of Yanmen County. Da-da-da, a crisp sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded, and a knight suddenly appeared on the nearby mountain ridge. The knight was dressed in a bearded robe, holding a curved sword and carrying a long bow on his shoulder. Sigh. Hu Qi drank his warhorse from his crotch and stood solemnly on the mountain ridge, staring fiercely at the foot of the mountain. At the foot of the mountain, there is undoubtedly the bustling Lufan County town. Standing on the mountain ridge, one can clearly see pedestrians in the city selling fur, livestock, and merchants from the central plains selling salt, iron, and silk. Upon seeing these, the hooded knight's gaze flickered with a hint of cruelty, and his sharp curved sword swung forward heavily. In an instant, the heavy sound of horse hooves resounded loudly. Hundreds or even thousands of hoop-clad cavalry emerged from behind the entire mountain ridge, all wielding curved swords and roaring towards the Lufan County under their feet. Enemy attack! Enemy attack! Woo-woo! On the watchtower outside the city tower, a sharp-eyed Qin soldier instantly spotted the hoop-clad cavalry on the mountain ridge and blew a horn as a warning. The next second, a wolf-toothed arrow shot fiercely and instantly pierced his throat. The Qin soldiers let out a scream and fell from the watchtower, the sound of their horns abruptly stopped. The Xianyang are here. The Xianyang have come to kill us. At this moment, the people in the city finally came to their senses, and the entire city was instantly fried. The people began to rush and flee, and the tea shops and tables were overturned with a loud bang. Various goods were scattered countless times. The entire county town was instantly in chaos. Wow! The cries of the Xianyang people rang out, and thousands of Xianyang cavalry rushed down from the mountain ridge. The distance from the mountain ridge to the city gate is less than 1 kilometer. The Xianyang cavalry arrived in an instant. Brothers, break the city and kill Qin Go. Kill me. The Xianyang cavalry showed a ferocious face and rushed towards the city gate like a crazy pack of wolves. In a daze, the entire city tower was trembling slightly. Quickly, close the city gate. Light the beacon and seek help from nearby military camps. Archers shoot arrows. Hurry up and shoot arrows. The Qin army stationed above the city tower quickly closed the gate and prepared to engage. Although the defending Qin soldiers were afraid in their hearts, they had no way out. Once the city was breached, the severe laws of the Great Qin could not spare them. Both sides are dead, why not just compete with the Xianyang wild race? On the horse's back, the ferocious faces of the Xianyang were clearly visible. Shoot arrows. Whoosh whoosh on the city tower, hundreds of feather arrows shot out like lightning. Ah! A series of mournful screams suddenly sounded, and dozens of Xiongnu cavalry fell off their horses, quickly being trampled into flesh by their companions' iron hooves. However, this level of attack was clearly not enough to stop the charge of the large Xiongnu cavalry. In an instant, the Xiongnu cavalry surged forward and rushed to the gate of Lufan city. Boom boom. The sound of fierce impact, along with the hissing of war horses, kept falling one after another, and the city gate collapsed with a loud roar under the crazy impact of the Xiongnu cavalry. Many Xiongnu cavalry were also injured by deer antlers arranged in front of the city gate, and were instantly pierced by sharp wooden spikes. The officers and soldiers of the Qin army were furious and threw their long sword horizontally in their hands, shouting loudly, "Brothers, both vertically and horizontally are fatal. Fight against these Xiongnu wild dogs. We Qin people are not afraid of death. Fight them." The Qin army on the city tower responded angrily and faced the surging Xiongnu cavalry. Pushi. Puzzy. Puzzy. Countless cold lights flashed by, countless blades slashed down, and in an instant, the defending Qin army was overwhelmed by the rolling cavalry. Faced with the surging Xiongnu cavalry, even if there were all kinds of unwillingness, one could only drink hatred on the spot. The next moment, the iron hooves of the Xiongnu cavalry began to rampage through the city, and then dozens of lit torches were thrown out of their hands and landed on houses. In the towering flames, the Xiongnu cavalry scattered and cruelly slaughtered, plundered PS, seeking fresh flowers. Chapter 3. Those who violate our Great Qin will be executed even if they are far away. You are listening at Novel Full. Audio. In the city of Lufan, there is already adult purgatory. On the official road more than 10 miles away from the county town, a group of Qin cavalry in black armor and black clothes are accelerating their sprint crazily. Just to arrive at Yanmen earlier and kill all the Xiongnu wild animals heading south. Lord Bao, the city of Lufan has been destroyed, and the flames are raging in the city. Explore again. No. In 15 minutes. When Ying Changying led his army to arrive, the Xiongnu had already fled far away. The entire county town has been reduced to ruins, with a strong smell of blood in the air and the burnt smell of corpses that is almost indelible. Wherever I could see, there were corpses scattered everywhere, from Qin to Xiongnu. A strong killing intent surged from Ying Changying's eyes, and his cold and piercing voice echoed in the air. Barbarians, all should be executed. A Qin village located dozens of miles away from Lufan County. Don't. A beautiful woman escaped from the house, dressed in disheveled clothes and with a worried expression. Ha ha ha. A Xiongnu man chased after the woman with a lewd smile, took 2 steps to catch up with her, and carried her whole on his shoulder. He reached out and slapped the woman heavily on her buttocks, emitting another burst of laughter, which was full of arrogance. Grandpa, wake up. A child aged 5 or 6 crawled out of a rice jar and came crying to an old man's side, vigorously shaking his flesh and blood, trying to wake him up. Unfortunately, the elderly can never wake up. Grandpa, wake up. The crying of the child caught the attention of another Xiongnu cavalry, who rushed over in an instant. Pushi. With a slash. The crying came to an abrupt end, and the child's thin and small body collapsed limply, leaning against the old man's body and falling into a pool of blood. This scene is simply a human purgatory. Animal. Bastards. I won't let you go even if I'm a ghost. The Xiongnu looked at the people of Qin with a look of hatred on their faces and sneered, "Weak Qin dog, don't make meaningless resistance anymore, just die obediently. I'm fighting with you guys." A strong man lifted a piece of iron pear and roared fiercely, sweeping a Xiongnu cavalry off his horse's back. Pushi burst with blood. The strong man added a blow and fiercely smashed the heads of the Xiongnu cavalry. The Xiongnu people who saw this scene next to them had a bright cold light in their eyes. You want to die? The strong man killed a Xiongnu man, and before he could catch his breath, another Xiongnu knight had already arrived with a roar. The sharp curved blade slashed down in anger, cutting straight at his forehead. The strong man knew that there was no way to avoid it, so he simply threw the iron pear over his head in an attempt to block the blow. A hint of mockery flashed through the eyes of the Xiongnu knights. Praying mantis like a chariot, overestimating oneself. Shoo! Just as the Xiongnu knight's curved sword was about to strike the strong man's head, a piercing scream suddenly sounded from his side, as if tearing through the air. What is it? The Xiongnu knight suddenly turned around. A sharp silver arrow instantly magnified inside his pupils. Before he could react, the arrow with a cold glow instantly penetrated his eye socket, penetrating his head and nailing him to the ground. Da-da-da, the heavy sound of horse hooves comes from far to near. The strong man first froze for a moment, then looked over along the sound of horse hooves. After seeing the visitor's attire clearly, his eyes suddenly shrank and turned into extreme ecstasy. I saw a fiery figure galloping towards me from afar, holding a silver spear and hanging a large bow on my back. It's the Great Qin Iron Cavalry. The Great Qin Iron Cavalry has come to save us. The strong man who narrowly escaped death shouted excitedly, tears welling up in his eyes. Villagers, everyone is saved. He ignored his injuries and let out a loud shout. Villagers, cheer up. Our savior has arrived. The Xiongnu people who were burning, killing, and looting in the village heard the commotion and looked over one after another. I saw a dazzling fiery red figure rushing towards me in an instant, holding a silver gun and flashing a cold killing intent. All die for me. A thunderous roar resounded, causing the eardrums of the Xiongnu to ache. Ying Changying, one person and one ride, has already arrived with a roar. The red rabbit horse under his crotch traveled thousands of miles in a day, distancing himself from his army. And now, even if he only had one person on horseback, it was more than enough to deal with this small group of Xiongnu people who were ravaging the Daqin village. His spear tore through the air and swept past the Xiongnu knights. Pushi! The crisp sound of the sharp weapon cutting through the flesh and bones suddenly rang out, and Ying Changying held a dragon bile silver spear as if chopping melons and vegetables, cutting off a Xiongnu knight's waist. The long spear was still weak, and it swept away the bodies of several Xiongnu knights in a row. Ah ah! The Xiongnu knights suddenly turned upside down and screamed in agony. Countless pieces of flesh and blood splattered out of their bodies. Where did Qin Go come from? Hurry up! Report to the commander, there is a raid. There is a raid. The distant Xiongnu knights were so frightened that their hearts were shattered. They suppressed the surging in their stomachs and turned their heads in fear before running away. Where did this guy come from? He's so strong that he doesn't look like a human. Those who violate our Great Qin will be killed. Ying Changying shook the minced meat on the shiny silver spear of Longdan and continued to gallop on horseback. Every shot passed, and the Xiongnu people died in his hands. The state of death is extremely cruel. The light armor of the Xiongnu people was like paper paste in front of him, easily pierced. Until Ying Changying drove forward for nearly 100 meters, he restrained his horse and turned around to look. The Xiongnu people behind were already in chaos. The impact of Ying Changying alone caused them tremendous damage. Moreover, physical harm is far less profound than mental harm. Ying Changying's ghostly posture directly made the Xiongnu knights lose all their will to resist. At this moment, the leader of the Xiongnu cavalry finally came to his senses, only to find that he had already lost control of the situation. With such a killing god present, the Xiongnu people under his command had already been killed, and their hearts were shattered. They scattered and fled, and no one listened to him even though he shouted loudly. He could only watch helplessly as his elite cavalry turned into fish and meat for slaughter. It's over, it's all over. The Xiongnu commander felt a moment of darkness in front of him, but the next second, a fierce wind-breaking sound suddenly sounded in his ear. Pushi. The silver spear of the gentian shone through his neck, and a burst of blood shot out. The head of the Xiongnu commander had already flown high and was nowhere to be found. P.S. Seeking fresh flowers. Chapter 4. Kill all, leave no one behind. Seeking. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Stop it. Don't kill. Surrender. We surrender. In just a moment, the Xiongnu knights were killed and collapsed, throwing away their weapons and dismounting to surrender. Unfortunately, Ying Changying won't give them a chance to survive, just kill them. He, young Master Changying. 10 years ago, the Xiongnu were killed with their heads rolling and blood flowing into a river. Unfortunately, after years of inaction, these wild species seem to have forgotten about him. However, for Ying Changying, she didn't care at all. Because soon, he will make the entire grassland leave his name deep in his heart once again. And the price paid is their lives. Ha ha ha, well done. We are saved. Yanmen has been saved. At this moment, although the people of the Great Qin were all injured and extremely weak. But their faces were filled with smiles and they burst into laughter. No one knows better than them how powerful the fighting power of these Xiongnu people is. However, it was these powerful Xiongnu knights who were like paper paste in Ying Changying's hands, without any resistance. Ying Changying has been bloodied all the way. Not long after, the heavy sound of horse hooves echoed again on the official road not far away. Ying Changying's army has arrived. The most mobile Shinji camp arrived first. Don't take prisoners, gather at the Pinyin ferry in 15 minutes. Ying Changying's tone was extremely cold, with a piercing chill in her eyes. No. Thousands of divine machine battalions took command with a loud roar. The Xiongnu had already been scared out of their wits by Ying Changying. Run quickly. One by one, the Xiongnu knights lost their weapons and fled in all directions. Xiongnu wild race, don't run. Kill these animals. The surviving people of the Great Qin all roared mournfully. Ying Changying's Shinji camp began to coldly string the bows and crossbows. Bow, aim, then pull the trigger. Shoo shoo. Shoo shoo. A series of piercing sounds suddenly rang out, and cold arrows formed a dense cloud in the air, flying over the heads of the Xiongnu cavalry in an instant, and then plunging down like wildfire. In the blink of an eye, the fleeing Xiongnu cavalry howled and fell into a pool of blood. This massacre against the Xiongnu did not last long, and thousands of Xiongnu cavalry were completely slaughtered. The people of Qin who were rescued by Ying Changying all knelt down in excitement. The eyes that looked at Ying Changying one by one were full of gratitude and respect. At this moment, Ying Changying is like a divine being in their eyes. We are willing to follow the general in battle. As long as we can kill the Xiongnu wild race, let's do whatever we want. The young and strong people of Qin who survived have all requested. Today, they watched helplessly as the Xiongnu slaughtered and humiliated their wives and daughters. Such shame can only be washed away with the blood of that generation. Sure. Ying Changying's gaze swept over and she gently uttered 2 words before rushing out first. The cavalry behind closely follows behind. In less than a quarter of an hour, the subsequent army gradually assembled. 3,000 soldiers on the back. 1,000 iron floats. 1,000 divine machine camp. More importantly, the 8,000 heavy cavalry carefully selected from the army of the Great Qin. Among them, the iron floating butcher, dressed in black iron armor, was particularly prominent, with both the person and the rider dressed in heavy black armor, as well as the sharp iron spikes covering their entire body. Like a series of ferocious and fierce ghosts, making people cold at the sight. Except for the highly mobile Shinji camp, whether it is the Beiwei Army, Iron Floating 2, or the heavy cavalry of the Great Qin, they do not excel in their mobility. But Ying Changying still brought them along. This time, he is determined to teach the foreign race an unprecedented lesson. Pinyin Fairy, sigh, Ying Changying gently drank the red rabbit horse and slowly raised her right arm. Behind him, a Qin army knight held high a black flag with the words, Daqin, written on it. The big flag fluttered in the wind and made a sound of hunting. Tens of thousands of iron cavalry stood solemnly in the wind behind Ying Changying, the dark armor emitting a suffocating coldness. The law of lamentation, the red rabbit horse under Ying Changying's crotch trembled its graceful mane, its nostrils parted, and emitted a loud and extremely loud hissing sound. Ying Changying slowly turned around, her gaze gliding coldly over the faces of the Qin soldiers. Cut off the heads of these Xiongnu people and build the Jingguan. Let everyone know that this is the fate of those who offend me in the Great Qin dynasty. Ying Changying's voice was as cold and piercing as if from the Nine Netherworld. The cavalry of Yi Tsong had a stern expression, while the eyes of thousands of Qin iron cavalry suddenly became scorching. Blood debt can only be repaid with blood. Those who violate our Great Qin will be killed. Kill it. Kill it. Ding. Congratulations to the host for completing the Jinghua branch mission and annihilating the invading Xiongnu troops in Yanmen County. Reward all attributes +3, and reward Yi Kong Jia Su, the chaotic poison warrior. Suddenly, Ying Changying felt a new force pouring into her limbs, and her brain was also clear. The effect of all attributes +3 is still very obvious, and he can clearly feel the change in his own strength. However, he is more interested in new followers. Jia Su, a drug dealer in the chaotic country. Surprisingly, it's him. Ying Changying didn't know whether her mood was happy or worried. No one knows better than him what this name represents. Jia Su, Poisonous Master. The poison of strategy comes with a single blow, leaving no way out. In that era, he almost caused several major disturbances in the Central Plains. The high level of scheming and the ingenuity of strategy can be called the pinnacle. At the same time, Jia Su is a person who can do anything to protect himself, an extreme egoist. Chaotic country drug warriors, a true double-edged sword. Use it well, the sharpness is unparalleled in the world. Not using it properly can harm others and oneself. Soon, a middle-aged scholar emerged from the Qin army camp under his command. Su, pay respects to the Lord. P.S. Seeking flower rewards and evaluation tickets. Chapter 5. Chaotic Country Poison Warriors. Seeking to collect flowers and give rewards. You are listening at novelfull.audio. At this moment, as we approached, under the reflection of the torches in the soldiers' hands, we could vaguely see Jia Su's appearance. He looks a bit thin, with square facial features, and is about 30 years old. He is dressed in a navy blue cotton robe and looks like a middle-aged scholar. Ying Changying nodded slightly and said, "Sir, there's no need to be too polite. Open the system panel and see Jia Su's attributes." Followed by Jia Su, a drug dealer in the chaotic country force. 62 physical fitness. 65 strategy. 98 commander-in-chief. 79 politics. 95 Sure enough, it's similar to what he expected. Jia Su's intellectual and strategic attributes are extremely prominent, almost reaching the limits of humanity, and equally prominent are his political attributes. Ying Changying suddenly realized that Jia Su's later position as the third duke in the Chao Wei group was not only due to his strategic planning, but also outstanding in handling internal affairs. Ying Changying directly opened the door and said to the mountain, "Since you're here, why don't you give me some advice, sir? I wanted to go north to quell the rebellion of the other ethnic groups, but the Xiongnu cavalry came and went like a wind. Every time the Qin army arrived, the enemy had already led them away. To be honest, I'm having a headache over this matter and I don't know how to solve it. Could you please give me a clear direction, sir?" This statement was indeed his true thoughts, not just Ying Changying's attempt to pacify the Xiongnu. Ying Zheng, who was far away in Xianyang city, wanted to pacify the Xiongnu even more. General Meng Tian led a 300,000-strong army of Qin soldiers from the north, eyeing the Xiongnu with great determination to solve this deep-seated problem once and for all. Unfortunately, the status quo has been maintained for a long time. It's because the mobility of the Xiongnu cavalry was too strong. The ethnic group living on horseback has been skilled in archery and horseback since childhood, and everyone is a soldier. If you miss a single hit, immediately run away. Although the Qin army was strong, there was never much to do with them. Both the Qin army on the border and the people of the Great Qin suffered greatly and suffered unbearable hardships. Ying Changying played a significant role in successfully intercepting this group of Xiongnu cavalry this time. The red rabbit horse under his crotch traveled thousands of miles in a day, and the speed that the Xiongnu were proud of was not worth mentioning in front of him. Unfortunately, Ying Changying is only one person. Although he can kill 100 people today, 1,000 people. But for the entire alien race, it is insignificant and cannot fundamentally solve this problem. Upon hearing Ying Changying's words, Jia Su pondered for a moment and said in a solemn voice, "This matter is not difficult to say. Su has 3 strategies to solve the troubles of other ethnic groups, all based on the Lord's decision." Oh! A strange expression flashed in Ying Changying's eyes. It was truly Jia Su who came up with a solution so quickly, and there were only 3 of them. But it doesn't matter. Jia Su nodded slightly and continued, "In Su's opinion, the Lord can send 2 envoys each to Donghu and Yueshur, using gold and silver to pave the way for the high-level officials of the 2 countries and lure them to send troops to encircle and suppress. At that time, the Lord can send troops south of Yinshan to block the Xiongnu's southward journey, forming a situation of encircling the 3 towers and 1 tower. If the Xiongnu wanted to survive in death, they had to head north all the way. This was a strategy to drive away tigers and swallow wolves." Upon hearing these words, Ying Changying's eyes flickered with contemplation, but she remained silent. In fact, this strategy is definitely not bad. Its essence is also a combination of vertical and horizontal. In the early days, Qin relied on this strategy to establish its position as a strong country in one fell swoop. Just a plan is a good one. Ying Changying doesn't really like it. In his view, whether it was the Xiongnu, Donghu, or Yueshur, they were all birds of a feather. Today, the expulsion of the Xiongnu and the future expansion of the Donghu have not changed much for the Central Plains. The invaders who will move south in the future have only changed their names. In thought, a rapid sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded in the distance. In a moment, a tall knight dressed in black armor appeared in his sight, and Ying Changying's gaze narrowed slightly, recognizing him. This tall knight is undoubtedly his subordinate. Yen De, one of the 18 riders of Yen Yun. After the system rewarded Yen Yun's 18 cavalry, Ying Changying named them Yen De, Yen Air, and so on. And these 18 people are also his most trusted existence. I have always been sent to various places to serve as an ear and eye, and this time I am returning, something important must have happened. As expected, Yen De ran all the way, flipped over and dismounted in front of Ying Changying, and said in a deep voice. "Newspaper Lord. Just yesterday, a total of 9 border towns in Beidi, Yanmen, and Yueyang were attacked by foreign tribes. Moreover, my subordinates have discovered many armies of the Donghu tribe in the foreign army." How brave! Ying Changying's gaze suddenly turned cold. Donghu. I just mentioned this name, but I didn't expect it to come true so soon. Just contrary to what Jia Su said, the Xiongnu and Donghu actually came together. No wonder the Xiongnu dared to go south this time. It turned out they had found an ally. I still underestimate these foreign races, as they are indeed capable people. The atmosphere in the air appears oppressive and solemn. Ying Changying said in a deep voice, "Where did the Donghu people cross the Great Wall and enter the border?" "It is the Great Wall that enters from the ancient north entrance." Yenda walked up to Ying Changying, took out a map, pointed to a certain point on the map, and said, "Lord, the ancient north entrance is here." An inexplicable chill suddenly appeared in Ying Changying's eyes, and the ancient north gate was only 100 miles away from Yuyang. It is the only channel connecting Yuyang County to the outside of the Great Wall. And Changgong Zifu Su is currently serving as a supervisor in Yuyang. P.S. Kneeling to beg for flowers to reward positive feedback tickets. Starting from today in Chapter 6, I want to herd horses in Yin Mountain. You are listening at novelfull.audio. Ying Changying didn't feel much about this nominal elder brother in her heart. Although I have met several times, the impression I gave him was rigid and cliché. Similarly, Feilu did not have a good impression of Ying Changying, believing that he loved to fight fiercely and was vulgar. Two people dislike each other and have little interaction. Just thinking of this name makes me unconsciously think of his future ending. After the death of Emperor Shi Huang, Zhao Gao tampered with the imperial edict to support Hu Hai's succession to the throne, while Prince Feilu was executed. Moreover, the other descendants of the first emperor had almost no good fate. If he didn't have a system by his side, the outcome would probably not be much better than others. Ying Changying took a breath and cleared these chaotic thoughts out of her mind. How many Donghu people have arrived? More than 5,000 riders. Ying Changying nodded coldly. Yuyang is an important border town, guarded by tens of thousands of Qin soldiers, and the 5,000 Hu cavalry should not pose a threat. Just Jia Su's strategy of driving away wolves and swallowing tigers is likely to become a failure. Ying Changying let out a faint sigh and whispered, "It seems that, sir, this plan may not be feasible now." Jia Su's face did not show any awkwardness, and his expression was somewhat focused. The rapid changes in fighter jets are understandable. However, it seems that my second strategy may not be effective. Jia Su is well versed in the art of preserving oneself with wisdom, and his insight into human nature can be said to be at the pinnacle of perfection. When it came to driving away tigers and swallowing wolves before, it was obvious that Ying Changying's eyebrows were furrowed. After some thought, he understood a bit. Ying Changying's goal is to solve the problem of foreign races from the root. The second strategy given by Jia Su is actually a strategy to promote kindness, which is the true soft knife for killing without seeing blood. It can be said to be extremely cunning. Once successful, the Xiongnu's control could be directly divided from within. Unfortunately, this level may not satisfy Ying Changying. So, I understand. Jia Su took a deep breath and said in a condensed voice, "Su still has a plan. He can conquer the northern desert within a year and solve the troubles of other ethnic groups once and for all." Upon hearing this, Ying Changying stared at Jia Su with some hesitation. Sweep the northern desert within a year. Looking at the Great Qin, I'm afraid even the most arrogant person wouldn't dare to make this assertion. But this sentence comes from Jia Su's mouth, which seems somewhat reasonable. Ying Changying said in a deep voice, "Sir, please speak." Jia Su said calmly, "The north and south rivers of Yin Mountain are crisscrossing, and the water and grass are abundant, feeding millions of Xiongnu people. All we need to do is burn Yin Mountain, poison the water source, and cut off the vitality of Xiongnu survival from the root. In less than 3 months, countless tribes will find it difficult to survive, and at that time, Shenchang will perish. Those who follow will receive their troops, while those who rebel will barbarize their tribes. That's all." Jia Su's tone was indifferent, as if he was just talking about a small matter, but Ying Changying couldn't help but take a cold breath. Indeed, he is a drug dealer in a chaotic country. Perhaps, just because of his words today, tens or millions of nomadic tribes will die cruelly, and the entire grassland will also suffer from catastrophic damage. However, When Ying Changying's mind flashed with the tragic situation inside Lufan City, her gaze suddenly became even colder. Xianyang's downfall. Ying Changying's eyes flickered sharply, and he said with a stern tone, "That's exactly what I mean. Since ancient times, on this land of northern desert, the people's customs have been both fierce and ignorant. The grassland ethnic group's reverence for military force is deeply ingrained in their bones. In this place, strength determines everything. Survival of the fittest. The strong slaughter the weak, even taking away their wives, children, cattle, sheep, and livestock. These are all considered natural things, and no one ever thinks they are wrong. Even if there is unwillingness in the heart, it is only unwillingness towards one's own weak strength. For a long time, the ethnic beliefs of these foreign ethnic groups have become exceptionally weak, and cannot be compared to the Central Plains people who have undergone royal culture. These barbarians have no issue of belonging to ethnic sentiments. So, whether you are from Qin, Xiongnu, or Donghu, as long as you have enough strength, even if your methods are despicable and may harm Tianhe, winning is winning. You are the owner of this land, the king of all people. Jia Su said, everything must be done step by step. Lord, you can first take Hetao to the west, collect all the troops from Itsu, and then lean against the stability of Hetao to lead your army northward to cross the Yin Mountain and defeat the Xiongnu. Then, all the land in the desert will belong to Lord, and the Xiongnu's iron cavalry will also be driven by Lord. Actually, he still has one sentence to say. That is to wait until there is a change in the Central Plains in the future, and Ying Changying can lead his troops south and conquer the throne in one fell swoop. But now that the ancestor dragon of the Great Qin is still alive, Jia Su, no matter how bold he is, dare not easily utter these words. Upon hearing these words, Ying Changying's eyes lit up instantly. Jia Su's seemingly simple words made him suddenly enlightened. This is like Zhuge Kongming's theory of dividing the country into 3 parts, setting a strategic direction for Liu Bei group. With a clear direction, we won't start things like headless flies without a clear sequence. Ying Changying looked at the Xuanjia knight with a stern gaze and said in a deep voice, Yenda, continue to intensify the collection of intelligence, especially pay close attention to the latest developments in the Hetao area. Yen de Gongren accepted the order and said, I comply. P.S. Kneeling for flowers, rewarding and praising tickets, monthly pass with 10 additional chapters. Chapter 7. Mercy does not command soldiers. Seeking to collect flowers and give rewards. You are listening at Novel Full.audio. Outside Yuyang County. Hey, we're going to war again. In the carriage, young Master Fusu's face was full of sadness. The Hu cavalry went south and plundered everywhere. Meng Tian had already led a large army to besiege and suppress them. As the supervisor, his task was to escort supplies and ensure logistics. On either side of him, thousands of laborers were carrying and transporting supplies slowly. However, when he saw the people with sad faces listening to complaints in different dialects and observing their pain, Fu Su couldn't bear it. His situation was somewhat similar to that of Ying Changying. Chongping Jun, the uncle of Fusu, once betrayed the state of Qin and ultimately ended in a tragic death. His mother was also sent to the cold palace and died in depression, but unlike Ying Changying, although Fu Shu was also kicked to the border, Ying Zheng still did not give up on him as his eldest son. Letting him defend the border is more about honing him. Fu Shu sighed inwardly as he watched the servants bravely travel in the cold wind. Many of them trembled with cold and turned pale. Before they arrived at Mengtian camp, dozens of people collapsed halfway. At this moment, there was a commotion coming from below, and another commoner fainted on the road. He was already the 10th person on the road today. The soldiers of Daqin on the side showed no mercy and ordered other servants to carry him to the roadside. If he could wake him up, he continued to walk. If he couldn't wake up, let him lie down forever. Fusu couldn't bear to watch anymore, so he jumped off the carriage and shouted loudly to the soldiers of Qin who were aggressively urging the people. Stop and lift the fainting commoner onto my young master's carriage for the doctor to take a look. The other commoners, gather and repair on sight. Young master, think twice. The centurion who was escorting supplies nearby turned green with fear upon hearing this. Quickly persuading, young master. General Meng has issued a military order. If we cannot reach the camp before dark, we will all be dealt with by military law. Don't tell me these things. Young Master Fu Su said, I am the supervisor of the army. It was my command to make the people rest. If Meng Tian insists on punishing me, then punish me. The centurion was very embarrassed, his throat twitched, but he couldn't say a word. You are the eldest son, of course fearless. What should these subordinates do? But since young Master Fusu had said so, he had no choice but to let out a sigh and arrange for everyone to stop and repair. The long supply line stopped advancing, and when the servants found out that it was the young Master Fusu Kaiyan, they arranged for a doctor to treat the fainting servant and couldn't help but shout loudly. Young Master, wise. Young Master, wise. Late at night, the Qin army's camp. The torch burned fiercely, illuminating the great tent like daylight. General Meng Tian is convening a meeting of his subordinates for discussion. At the sound of the wind, the tightly closed curtain of the tent was suddenly lifted by someone, and a military officer rushed straight into the camp. The strong wind it brought shook the burning torch in the tent, causing it to flicker. Meng Tian's face darkened as he was about to scold when he realized that the person coming was actually his deputy general. He quickly asked, "What's up?" The deputy general took the first 2 steps and knelt in front of Meng Tian, saying in a deep voice, "General, we have just received a secret report from the scouts. Not only has Yuyang County been attacked by Hu cavalry, but also many border towns such as Shangu, Yuyang, and Yanmen have been raided by foreign cavalry. All towns are in urgent need of the general's troops for rescue." Meng Tian was greatly surprised. Just one Yuyang is enough, Shangu, Yanmen and other places have been invaded, such a big battle. These barbarians are crazy. The deputy general said with a bitter face, "No, the general, the Xiongnu people, and the Donghu people are in cahoots. The defense of each county was caught off guard and suffered heavy losses." Meng Tian smiled angrily and said, "Didn't I leave tens of thousands of soldiers and horses in various counties? How could I be in a hurry? These useless things are really infuriating me." However, he knew that this was not the time to get angry. Meng Tian took a breath and ordered, "Send my military order, each county will send an additional 10,000 troops and horses, set off at night, go rescue quickly." By the way, Meng Tian suddenly thought of something and asked, "Why hasn't the logistics camp arrived yet?" Upon hearing this, the deputy general's face changed slightly and he hesitated for a while before finally speaking. The scout reported that the logistics army is currently repairing 300 miles away, and tonight. I'm afraid they won't be able to reach the military camp. Meng Tian widened his eyes and shouted sternly. The military situation is like fire, why stop if you don't accelerate your pace? The adjutant hurriedly said, "General, calm down and let the people rest. This is the decision of young Master Fusu." As a supervisor, Fu Su was appointed by the court to control the transportation and supply of the army, as well as the rewards and punishments of generals. In theory, it is one level lower than the commander of a large army, but in reality, the commander cannot directly issue orders to the supervising army. Both parties belong to the existence of mutual checks and balances. Managing the logistics team does indeed belong to the power of Fusu. It's a delay in the military situation. Meng Tian sighed in her heart, thinking of Fusu's personality, she had probably guessed what was going on. In theory, those nobles and noble sons who have been pampered since childhood, who do not view human life as worthless and the people as feces. However, Gongzi Fusu's pure and kind nature is somewhat unusual. It's just a pity, this pure goodness doesn't work in the right place. Meng Tian rubbed her eyebrows with some exhaustion, and couldn't help but think of another person in her heart. Ying Changying, who is also the prince of the Great Qin, is the same as Fusu. Although both young masters, Ying Changying and his personality are completely different from those of Fusu. One is pure and kind, but somewhat pedantic, while the other has a strong personality and is decisive in killing and attacking. They are completely two opposing entities. Meng Tian greatly appreciates Ying Changying and is a very rare general. Over the years, foreign tribes have repeatedly migrated south, but the Shangjuan and Beidi guarded by Ying Changying have been spared no harm. It is enough to show the strength of Ying Changying. But if nothing unexpected happens, this hardworking young master can only stay on the border for life and cannot return to Xianyang. This is an internal matter of Ying Zheng's family, and he dare not ask any foreign ministers much, only feeling a little regretful for Ying Changying. I don't know what young Master Changying is doing at this moment. P.S. Kneeling for flowers to reward and evaluate monthly tickets. If the flowers exceed 5,000 today, an additional 10 chapters will be added. P.S. Kneeling for flowers to reward and evaluate monthly tickets. If the flowers exceed 5,000 today, an additional 10 chapters will be added. P.S. Kneeling for flowers to reward and evaluate monthly tickets. If the flowers exceed 5,000 today, an additional 10 chapters will be added. P.S. Kneeling for flowers to reward and evaluate monthly tickets. If the flowers exceed 5,000 today, an additional 10 chapters will be added. Chapter 8. Borrow the heads of all the people on your necks. Add. You are listening at novelfull.audio. The Yellow River flows eastward, heading north along the Helan Mountains, eastward when encountering the Yin Mountains, and southward when encountering the Liang Mountains. The shape is in the shape of a few. Within a few words, the area north of the Great Wall is the Hetao area. This place was originally occupied by the people of Itsu, but was later destroyed by Qin, and most of the territory became Qin territory. Among them, the Itsu people who still reside here, some surrendered to the Great Qin, while the other formed their own tribes, neither getting close to the Great Qin nor joining the Xiongnu. But Ying Changying knew that it was this group of Itsu people who often disguised themselves as Xiongnu people and went south to plunder. And this time, Ying Changying's goal is precisely these Itsu tribes. At the foot of Helan Mountain, there is a Itsu tribe. The heavy curtain was lifted and a young Xiongnu man strode in with a shooting star. His name is Faden, the son of the Xiongnu's great Danyu Tu man, with a noble status. Looking at the various leaders of Itsu in the big tent, a hint of disdain flashed through his eyes, but he quickly restrained himself. His purpose of coming this time is to unite these Itsu tribes. What? The presumptuous leader wants us to go deep into the Great Wall to attack the Qin people's camp. Upon hearing the sudden arrival, more than a dozen nominal canal leaders turned pale. They were captured by the power of the Xiongnu and had to come into contact with Morton. Unexpectedly, the other party would speak amazing words as soon as they arrived. Speak up and let them attack Daqin. What's the difference between this and seeking death? Don't be impatient, everyone has been staying here for a long time and the news is closed. But I don't know that our king has teamed up with the Donghu to invade the south in turns. The Qin people are now too busy to worry about themselves. How could they cause trouble for everyone? Besides, since Modern has already arrived here, it means that all the counties of the Qin army have exhausted their armies, and the defense of each county city must be empty. If you can take the opportunity to attack and destroy one place, not only can you make a name for yourself on the grassland, but you can also use the name of revenge for the Itsu kingdom to gather the scattered Itsu tribes in Hetao. It can be said that you have killed two birds with one stone. I don't understand why you didn't do it. Although Feiduan is young, he has already shown the rough outline of the ambitious plan that Xiaoxiong should have. After these words, the head of Itsu present in the audience's eyes flickered, clearly showing some movement. One of the leaders hesitated and said, "There is an elite border army of the Great Qin stationed in the pass, and the generals of the Qin court, Meng Tian, and the captain of Shangjuan, Ying Changying, are both powerful characters. There are less than 10,000 brave warriors in our clan, I'm afraid. Haha. Even the most elite Qin army is just a lamb waiting to be slaughtered. Mao Dun said ambitiously, and our children on the grassland are wolves. Have you ever seen a lamb eating wolves? Report, suddenly, a shout rang out from outside the large tent, followed by the sound of hurried footsteps. A figure flashed past, and a dusty Itsu person rushed in. Boss, a large group of Qin cavalry has been discovered 20 miles ahead, heading towards our tribe. What? The leaders of Itsu exchanged a look of shock. Faden was also a bit surprised, but then he smiled and spoke up. It seems that I need to take one step first. My suggestion must be carefully considered by everyone and not let down my king's trust in you. Leaving a half-polite and half-threatening sentence, he hastily strode away, leaving the heads of various Itsu in the account looking at each other with a slightly unpleasant expression. What is the Qin army doing at this time? I don't know, let's just wait and see what happens. The night is like ink, and the strong wind calls. The moon is dark and the wind is high at night, it is the time to kill. Itsu Daying. A dozen torches illuminated the large tent like daylight. Ying Changying, dressed in armor, sat on a soft deer skin mattress, with a pair of black lacquered eyes indifferent to the dozen or so Itsu chieftains in the tent. A faint cold light flashed away. Behind Ying Changying, several Xuanjia guards stood with swords and solemn expressions. Sizzling. The burning torch made a somewhat vulgar sound, and the atmosphere inside the account seemed somewhat oppressive and solemn. I will see young Master Daqin. More than 10 leaders of the Itsu tribe lined up in front of Ying Changying, each with a respectful expression, holding their chest with their right hand and performing the highest etiquette. They are all mature individuals who know when to bow their heads. The Itsu kingdom had long been conquered by the Qin dynasty. Although these tribes were not nominally ruled by the Qin dynasty, they still unconsciously lowered their heads when they saw the Qin army. Ying Changying solemnly said, "Ladies and gentlemen, please sit down." "Thank you, young master." A dozen or so leaders bowed down again to thank each other, and then sat down separately. Ying Changying's gaze relaxed as she swept over the faces of the dozen or so leaders and said in a deep voice, "I have encountered some trouble recently and have come to your place to ask for your help. Of course, it's just a small favor." Upon hearing these words, the leaders of Itsu looked at each other and lowered their high heads, respectfully speaking. "But according to the young master's orders." "Very good. I want to borrow something from you, young master," said Ying Changying with an inexplicable smile at the corner of her mouth. "As long as the young master needs it, we will definitely obey." "Okay. That's great." Ying Changying's smile at the corner of her mouth became even more cheerful. "I would like to borrow your heads on the neck to use it. P.S. Thank you, Daqin, for your monthly pass and flowers as a reward. +1 update. Chapter 9. Those who dare to have disrespectful orders will surely destroy the righteous canal. You are listening at novelfull.audio. What are you saying? A dozen or so Itsu leaders looked at each other in shock, unable to believe their ears. Several of the young leaders were already losing their composure, their eyes flickering with ferocity, their fingers clenched on the handle of the knife, ready to explode at any moment. The elderly and dignified leaders looked at each other and dared not act recklessly. It's really strange in his heart that they are already so respectful. Why does Ying Changying still want to kill them? Unfortunately, Ying Changying's intentions were clearly beyond the simple minds of these Itsu chieftains. Leaving aside the evil deeds of these Itsu tribes who often disguised themselves as Xiongnu and went south to plunder, let's not talk about it. More importantly, Ying Changying wants the people of Itsu to become his most loyal lackeys and his vanguard in sweeping the northern desert. The iron cavalry of the Great Qin dynasty was not good at rushing, and when encountering the highly mobile Xiongnu people, they could only sigh and look at them. But these Itsu cavalry also grew up on the grassland, skilled in archery and horse riding, which can make up for the biggest weakness of the Qin army and consume them without any worries. And the last important reason is that Hatao is connected to the Great Wall in the south, and is surrounded by the Yellow River. It can be said that it is surrounded by natural dangers on all sides, and can be attacked and defended when retreating. Taking this as a position was the best choice to capture the Xiongnu. So, he must integrate the various parts of Itsu in the Hatao generation. However, such integration is bound to touch upon the interests of the Yikutu people and will inevitably face strong opposition from them. So, these Yikutu people can only go to die. Young Master Qin, what nonsense are you talking about? A tall Itsu chieftain sternly said, our tribe has always been obedient and has never provoked the Great Qin. How dare you say you want to kill us? A cold murderous intent floated in Ying Changying's eyes. Being obedient to oneself, do you really think that I, the Great Qin, are all blind? The head of Yikutu was furious. I'm sorry. You're slandering the entire Itsu tribe. Such a rude and unreasonable way of doing scriptures, you will surely become the enemy of the entire grassland. You. Have you finished talking nonsense? Ying Changying mercilessly interrupted him. After speaking, let's go on the road. The young leader of Itsu shouted sternly, ladies and gentlemen, I have long said that the people of Qin are petty people who have broken their promises. They promised not to offend us at all, but now they have gone back and forth. What are you talking nonsense about with him? Let's chop him off together, then lead the tribe to kill all the Qin soldiers, and then head north to seek refuge with two-man Chanyu. Kill! The famous man let out a loud shout and swung his knife straight towards Ying Changying. Chong! 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 The sound of weapons being unsheathed rang out one after another, and the guards behind Ying Changying took a step forward suddenly. Some Yikutu people's eyes flicker, constantly retreating, trying to sneak away. Do you want to leave? A cold wave of killing intent swept over, instantly locking the leader in place. Looking up in shock. Outside the large tent, I don't know when the Qin army, dressed in iron armor, had already been covered. The armor shimmered with a suffocating dull gleam. Ladies and gentlemen, do you still want to leave alive now? Ying Changying took a step back and said coldly, kill me. Kill. In an instant, the tightly closed tent was suddenly lifted open, and over 100 Qin soldiers dressed in heavy armor roared in murder. This is a carefully planned murder. Before arriving at the Itsu tribe, Ying Changying and Jia Su had already designed this scene. A few breaths of time. There are no living Itsu people in the big tent anymore. Even without the need for Ying Changying to take action, the Qin army, who were like wolves and tigers under his command, tore these Itsu leaders into pieces. A Qin general rushed over and said in a loud voice, young master, all the young and strong members of the Itsu tribe have been under control. Let's wait for your release. Well done. Ying Changying nodded and turned out of the account. Wu, in the heavy and long sound of the horn, thousands of Qin iron cavalry slowly spread out on the wilderness. In front of them, there were densely packed Itsu people kneeling on the ground, their hands and feet bound, making it difficult to move. At the next moment, the dark and oppressive Qin army cavalry split apart, giving way to a path. Under the angry gaze of all the people in Itsu, Ying Changying rode out. The despicable and shameless Qin people. Son of a bitch. Qin go, I curse you not to die easily. The people of Itsu saw Ying Changying's voice and immediately cursed loudly. The moment before, it was clearly fine, but who knew that these despicable Qin soldiers suddenly took action and caught them off guard? In the Qin army formation, Ying Changying had a cold and indifferent expression. I didn't take these curses to heart at all. After all, he can't hold his breath with the dead. Amidst the hustle and bustle of the sky, a general named Qin emerged from the crowd and slowly walked to stand in front of the people in Itsu. Swordsmen are out. Bang, bang. Hundreds of Qin soldiers stepped forward and drew out their swords. The Qin general let out a loud shout, and more than 100 Qin soldiers approached one after another, each holding down the heads of a prisoner of war. The sharp blades were already raised high. Slash. With a command, blood flickered and over 100 heads rolled down to the ground. The blood of the people of Yizu instantly dyed the earth beneath their feet red. Slash. Slash again. The Qin general remained expressionless and kept repeating the same command. The Qin army, with a cold expression, swung down and down again. The burst of blood dyed their war robes red. The eastern sky is bright red, and the first ray of sunlight falls on this bloody land, like the blood prison of Shura. Several vultures were attracted by the strong smell of blood and kept hovering in the air. Cut back. Step back. After the execution was completed, the Qin army retreated, but there were thousands of separated bodies from Yizu on the land. Ying Changying rode out on horseback and slowly arrived at the front of the Yizu people's formation. His sharp eyes swept over him coldly, and all the Yizu people were staring at him. After a night of slaughter, they were all so frightened that no one dared to look directly at them. Oath of allegiance, spare you from dying. Ying Changying's cold voice rang out, and thousands of still-alive Yizu prisoners of war instantly lowered their high heads. No one dares to speak up and resist again. Very good. Ying Changying withdrew her gaze and shouted in a deep voice. Listen carefully. Now, I'll tell you what the rules are. All members of the Yizu tribe must obey my orders. If one person retreats, sit 10 people in a row. If 10 people retreat, sit 100 people in a row. If 100 people retreat, all tribes will be beheaded. If 1,000 people retreat, all the Yizu tribe will be executed. P.S. Seeking flowers to reward positive feedback tickets. Chapter 10. Going North. Add more, seek flower evaluation. You are listening at novelfull.audio. In the Yizu camp. Ying Changying forcibly subdued the Yizu tribe, and the number of cavalry under his command surged. There are more than 10,000 young and strong people in the Yizu tribe. When they were captured, they killed a group, and last night Beiwei killed another group. Nevertheless, there are still over 6,000 young and robust individuals left. Although the people of Qiyiku surrendered, they were forced to surrender. Once the situation changes, the first ones to betray them will be them. Jia Su said calmly, Lord, if you want to take in his people, you still need to return them to his heart. Otherwise, it's better to kill them all. Ying Changying nodded and said, so, I want to take women, children, and livestock to the state of Qin as collateral. What do you think, sir? He was actually a bit worried that retaining the women and cattle of the Yizu people would only increase their suspicion, and relying solely on killing and poking was also a timely choice. How to make them truly surrender will test the means of those in power. Jia Su said, not only that, my lord needs to show him his power, but also bestow him kindness. Only in this way can these Yizu people willingly integrate into our army. There are still many Yizu tribes scattered throughout Hetao today. Only by constantly supplementing these Yizu people can our army become stronger and stronger in battle. If we were to rely solely on us, even if we could ultimately defeat the Xiongnu, we would have suffered almost all the casualties. Ying Changying nodded secretly. Although there were tens of thousands of Qin soldiers under his nominal command, most of them had their own border defense tasks and should not be lightly moved. The limit he can mobilize is 8,000 Qin iron cavalry. Although there are thousands of loyal cavalry rewarded by the Zhenghua system, their strength is strong, at most it only allows them to have the capital to settle down and establish themselves in turbulent times. Although Ying Changying is proud, she is not arrogant. He never believed that he could easily be invincible to the world with the help of his system, which underestimated the people of the world. Ying Changying's gaze was like a knife, falling on Jia Su's face and asking, Sir, do you have a good plan? Jia Su said, actually, it's not difficult to make all the departments of Itsu return to their hearts. Oh. Ying Changying's eyes lit up and she asked, may I hear its details? Jia Su said, Itsu not only fought against the generations of the Great Qin, but also frequently attacked the Xiongnu. The two sides can be said to have a world feud. If the Lord can lead the Itsu people to go north to Yin Mountain, plunder the Xiongnu's territory, reward the women, children, and livestock they have obtained, and show them kindness, then it won't be long. The people of Itsu will surely bow down to the Lord's grace and naturally return to their hearts. Ying Changying immediately understood Jia Su's idea. He is truly a traitor to the country. Carrying Itsu cavalry northward, they carried out mass killings and looting, which not only catered to the retaliatory mentality of the Itsu people, but also directly cut off their retreat. Such wanton slaughter of the Xiongnu tribes will inevitably make it impossible for Itsu to establish a foothold on the grasslands in the future. The only way for them to protect themselves is to rely on the Great Qin. Over time, the people of Itsu naturally willingly became Ying Changying's minions. Jia Su said again, among the Xiongnu tribes, the Heavenly Wolf tribe is the closest to Hetao, and this time the Xiongnu people are all heading south. The tribe will inevitably guard against emptiness. At this time, the Lord will lead his troops north, which is the best and most profound. Okay. Ying Changying said coldly, immediately gather the cavalry of Itsu and head north. The sun is setting in the west. A slightly chaotic sound of horse hooves suddenly sounded, startling several bald eagles, flapping their wings and flying high into the sky. Feeling overwhelmed by the bloody scene in front of me, my face sank like water. The wilderness, which should have been the main camp of the Itsu tribe, is now in a mess. Just 2 days ago, Mao Dun was intimidated by the Qin army and hastily left the Itsu tribe, then found a hidden valley to hide. Until now, it has reappeared in the outside world. But the result made him never expect it. The bustling Itsu campsite 2 days ago has become completely silent, with only a cold headless corpse lying on the ground in all directions. In the center of the camp, thousands of heads are piled together, and the air is filled with a strong smell of blood, making people feel nauseous. Boss! Are these all done by Qin people? A servant looked at the scene in front of him, seeming somewhat incredulous. Feiduan ignored him and flipped off his horse to carefully examine the hoof marks on the ground. No less than 8,000 riders. With a calm and indifferent gaze, he said in a deep voice, there are countless cows and sheep in the Itsu tribe, and even the young women and children who are still alive are missing. The Qin people have completely wiped out the entire Itsu tribe. What do they want to do? Let me think. Fudan muttered to himself with a somewhat neurotic tone. What does the leader mean? The follower was puzzled. Do you want to deal with this group of Qin soldiers? But we only have a few hundred warriors with us now, unless we seek help from the tribe. After hesitating for a moment, he waved to his followers and said, Manada, take a dozen brothers with you immediately to see if there are any Itsu people who are fleeing. Yes, leader. Manada agreed, greeted a few of his subordinates, turned over, mounted his horse, and roared away. Soon, in less than 2 hours, they turned back and had one more person in their hands. Manada flipped over and dismounted, wiping off the sweat from his forehead, and said to Faden, Leader, catch one. With a cold gaze, he said in a deep voice, Bring it over. As the words fell, 2 Xiongnu warriors grabbed a pale-looking man from Itsu and came up to Maden, throwing him to the ground. The person shook himself up in fear and begged for mercy, Sir, spare your life, spare your life. Feiduan took out his machete and pressed it against the chest of the person from Itsu. He said in a condensed voice, Whatever I ask, you answer. Do you understand? The person nodded repeatedly and said, I understand. I understand. Okay. Let me ask you, where did the Qin people take the Itsu tribe? Yin Mountain, they're heading towards Yin Mountain. What? With a quick glance, the person hurriedly replied, "What I said is all true. Those demons really all went to Yin Mountain." Yin Mountain. Suddenly, my gaze froze and my thoughts spun. Firstly, they slaughtered the young and strong members of the Yitsu tribe, and then carried the remaining Yitsu people northward to the Yin Mountain. What exactly do these Qin people want to do? Feiden's young face flashed with confusion, lost in deep thought. Yinchuan Mountain. Located north of Shanggu County and southwest of Yinshan. Hundreds of miles around are lush grasslands. On the fourth day of the human world, herds of cattle and sheep flock to the grassland, while fat and strong horses spread out their four legs to run freely. At the foot of Yinchuan Mountain, a camp was surrounded by smoke from cooking, rising into the blue sky. The entire camp exudes a peaceful atmosphere. All the young and strong men in the camp have gone to war with the royal court, leaving only the elderly, weak, women and children, as well as a few Xiongnu warriors to stay behind. A blind old woman sat quietly, caressing her horsehead fiddle and singing songs from the grassland with her mouth. A group of 6 or 7-year-old Xiongnu children gathered around the old man, squinting their eyes and listening attentively. Not far away, a 16-year-old Xiongnu boy was taming a fierce horse, falling from its back time and time again. He gritted his teeth in pain, but got up again and again, his green face full of stubbornness. In a nearby stable, several young Xiongnu women sat together squeezing mare's milk, watching pure white mare's milk shoot into the earthen jars, their dark faces beaming with laughter. Yaleso, a crisp and moving singing voice rose leisurely, and a young and beautiful Xiongnu girl with a rosy complexion drove her flock back from afar. Woo-woo, suddenly, a deep and distant horn sounded without warning. With the long sound of the horn, an endless killing intent instantly spread from the grassland. The girl's gaze froze and she looked south. At the end of the grassland, on the vast horizon, a faint black line leisurely appeared before her eyes. Gradually, the black line on the horizon became thicker and thicker, as if there were faint thunderous sounds. In a daze, the earth beneath my feet seemed to be trembling gently. The next moment, the face of the Xiongnu girl changed. That is a cavalry. A cavalry force of tens of thousands. P.S. Seeking flowers to reward positive feedback tickets.